Right, we're looking at the real meaning behind the results of elections 2019. The ANC won this year's polls, but with a reduced majority. For the first time, the DA did not grow its support, but fell slightly from about 22% to nearly 21%. The EFF was the biggest gainer, reaching nearly 11%. Meanwhile, few bets were on the FF Plus doubling its support, but it did this. It's going from less than 1% to more than 2%, and that means double the seats in Parliament, taking it to 10. Let's get some more post-election analysis with Professor Tinyiko Maluleke. Thank you for being with us, Prof.
Pleasure.
There are no major upsets, no major changes in the political landscape, I guess, of South Africa. We'll look at the nuances just now, but top level, is that a good thing for South Africa?
I think it's a good thing insofar as it says that South Africans still hold to a common vision, that we are going in the same direction, that we are clear about where we want to go as a nation, and the ANC and the DA roughly represent, the core, the middle, if you like, of where it is that we want to go. So in that sense, it's not a bad thing, but it is a bad thing if you look at all the trouble that we have been through as a country over the past few years. You ask yourself whether a strong enough message has been sent to the political leaders of the country, the political parties. You could ask that. But I think you also have to acknowledge that the ANC is a political behemoth, if you like, very old organization, very deeply rooted among the people. It's going to take a lot to dislodge the ANC from their position of power.
Well, I'm glad you raised that, because I think there are two ways to see this. So some people say that a strong party post-liberation, maybe post-democracy in South Africa is a good thing because you have stability. Looking at Zimbabwe, when the MDC rose in the ranks, suddenly ZANU-PF became insecure, and maybe that led to more populist policies. On the other hand, others want the ANC on its toes, a pluralistic, open democracy with more parties gaining more votes. Where do you stand?
Well, in saying that the ANC is strong, is entrenched deeply, it is well established, a strong brand, difficult to dislodge, one is not saying that therefore that is necessarily good. I think that what we need is a situation where the ANC is not allowed to take its power for granted. More importantly, to take the people who vote for it for granted. And one of the ways in which this has happened in our country has been with the rise of the EFF, the role of the DA in particular in holding the ANC to power, but also ordinary folk have been going out into the streets protesting for this and that every third day in this country. And in that way, the ANC has not been allowed to completely take for granted its power, and because it is borrowed power, borrowed to it by South Africans.
Well, it's still a clear majority, 57.5%. Will the ANC feel like it's on its toes?
It's a very strong majority. The good thing about that is that what South Africans are saying is that we want you to get on with the job. We're giving you power. Please use it, not for yourselves, but in favor of ourselves. This is the message that people are giving it. Rather than diffuse the power, it seems to me that South Africans still believe that the best way that the power can be wielded in favor of ordinary South Africans is through a vehicle such as the ANC for now.
If you look at the nuances, so there's more support for the EFF, the clear winner in terms of percentage points gains. And on the other side, so that's on the left, on the other side, on the right, the FF Plus doubling its support. So you've got these two opposite extremes. What does that mean for Parliament and for South Africa?
Well, it's a slightly different, there's a different feel to Parliament. It's a different shape of Parliament. In many ways, the ANC loses 18 seats. The DA also loses some seats. The EFF benefits, and here comes the Freedom Front Plus. My sense is that the reason the Freedom Front Plus has grown is because if you want to be optimistic, you could say there has been a re-racialization of political rhetoric in South Africa. But if you want to be realistic, you could argue that it is not a re-racialization. It is an exposure of a reality that has been effaced and have been brushed over for a long time. Yeah. But now we know where we stand. And I think that that's why you have all the conservatives voting for the Freedom Front Plus and all the radical. I don't know that the EFF should be called leftist, because I'm not so sure that they are.
Who wants to nationalize the banks?
But anyway, I was trying to explain why, in my view, both of them grew. Clearly, the Freedom Front Plus has grown percentage-wise bigger than everyone. Yeah. The EFF has been tremendous if you look at the fact that they've only had one national election before this.
I spoke to the FF Plus, and they said that they won support from the DA. Clear and simple, because the DA wasn't strong enough on the land issue, the issue of expropriation. What does that mean for the DA? Should it say good riddance to those voters that maybe tend towards white nationalism?
Well, no political party wants to say good riddance to a vote or a voter.
Yeah, but it doesn't want to be seen to be that white extreme party at all.
Well, that's the problem with the DA. The real DA needs to stand up. In other words, can the DA continue in this kind of ideological middle place where they want to satisfy white interests as well as appeal to young black voters? It seems to me that the DA will have to come out of that space and speak in a particular voice to a much broader South African society. And those white people who are reasonable will go with the DA if the DA is not seen to prevaricate between national and white interests.
How serious is this result? So the DA stood its ground or at least almost stood its ground. But the ANC, I mean, has been riddled with corruption scandals, factional battles. Is this a real poor result for the DA?
I think because the DA expected to grow, and the DA has gotten used to growing, because they have been growing through the past 3 elections at least, if not more. So, you get used to growing and then you stop growing. It's very disappointing for them. But it also shows them that there is a lot more for them to do in terms of the black support. I mean, they have been wanting to grow blackwards, but they have been seen to hesitate, especially when it comes to black leadership. They've been seen to hesitate in allowing the blackness of the electorate that support them to be reflected in their leadership. So I think they will have to work through those kinds of things if they are going to compete the ANC successfully. For now,
are they between a rock and a hard place? Because they've always said posts are linked to merit. So that's not realistic in South Africa anymore. That's what you're saying?
No. Merit is realistic. I mean, because merit is not white. Merit is not black. Merit is merit. But in a country where you have a vast majority of black people, where you can only win an election if you get black support, this is the reality of South Africa. You cannot win an election without black support. I mean, we can say all we want about the Freedom Front Plus. If they are going to rely on white support, the ceiling is very close to where they are now.
Yeah. What does this mean for Mmusi Maimane? Is he in trouble?
I would hope that the DA would give him a chance to continue what he has started. But realistically, he is in trouble. He is in trouble because he still leads a DA that is ideologically unsure. a DA where there are, we talk about factions in the ANC all the time, but there are factions in the DA. And the powerful faction may want him out. And I think it will be a big mistake to take him out, especially depending on the manner in which he is taken out. Because the perception will be that he's being taken out not merely because he failed, because what did he fail? He failed.
Yeah, well, he failed to grow the party for the first time.
It is the failure of the entire party.
Yeah.
It is the failure of the entire party. The DA needs to accept that the DA as a whole has failed to grow. Same thing with this narrative that we have within the ANC. It's not either or. It's not either ANC or Ramaphosa. It is both that have managed to be where they are. Same thing with the failure of the DA. It's not either the DA or Mmusi Maimane has failed.
Yeah.
Both of them have failed, and they need to go together back to the drawing board and see how to move forward.
It seems to me both the DA and Mmusi Maimane failed to help South Africans understand the spat with Patricia de Lille and why she was wrong and they were right. Is that partly why they're here?
Well, as I sit and talk to you now, I don't know whether she was wrong and that they were right. I still don't know that. So it's not merely that they failed to show their rightness. I think that they failed to negotiate that whole affair, to navigate it, to administer it justly, to explain it to everyone, and to expedite it. I mean, it was so long drawn. At some stage, it became so boring and so painful to watch. And I think the biggest loser in all of that was the DA.
Patricia de Lille going to Parliament, will she be a thorn in the side for the DA?
I think she will be, because she didn't live in peace. I think it's a good thing that she's getting in. One of the few women leaders in Parliament at the moment. Doesn't have as many seats as she would have hoped to get. But who knows what will happen. The EFF has proven that it is possible to begin and to grow, and grow tremendously as they have done.
I think the EFF thought it could do even better. Do you agree?
I think they could have done better. My theory is this, that the EFF did not succeed in getting everyone who supports them to go out and vote. I think that they were hurt by the turnout of those who supported them. And this is something they will need to look at. Part of the reason is that most of their supporters are young people. Do they all have IDs? We don't know. In a country, I mean, the stampede and the clamor for IDs, even on voting day and the day before, for me was a little bit messy. And it tells you that there's something not right about the readiness of South Africans for elections. And I think the EFF may have been hurt by that. But if I were them, I would be very satisfied with this performance. It's not bad at all.
The EFF, however, doing well in student representative councils in universities. But we're seeing that young people aren't even registering. So it's not resonating with more than half of young people who didn't even bother to register.
Well, university students are a tiny minority of young people in South Africa. And they are the enlightened ones. I mean, we have 4 million young people who are nowhere. And that is an estimate. And how many of those 4 million do have IDs, and how many of them will actually step forward and go and vote. So I think that's where the EFF may have suffered. But also because the rhetoric of the EFF is fearsome. So it can put some people off in terms of its fierceness. That could have also had a role. And Cyril Ramaphosa was not their friend. Jacob Zuma was a better friend for the EFF in terms of them gaining more and more mileage.
Because they could throw better pot shots.
Precisely.
The EFF, you've picked up on something, some people concerned about their tolerance. I don't know if you saw Trevor Noah criticized Julius Malema, compared him to Donald Trump in the United States. And there's always a backlash from the EFF. Are you worried about their tolerance levels?
Well, I think that from time to time the EFF has shown some intolerance. especially to fellow political players, but also to the media. But I don't want to make it out as if this is a uniquely EFF problem. It's a South African political problem that we have. And just because we now have an ANC president who can thank the media and appreciate their role, it does not mean that the media and the ANC have always been friends either.
Yeah.
So I think we need to understand the rhetoric of the EFF. Rhetoric it is, actually. It's important to understand it as rhetoric in the context of very robust and very violent South African politics. At least verbally violent South African politics have been for a long, long time. And we've just had 9 years of Jacob Zuma. So it's, you know, Trevor is a comedian. It's difficult to analyze the input of a comedian because is this a serious pot shot or is it something that he did just for a laugh?
The EFF, you said the FF Plus pointed to the manifestation of the racial politics in South Africa. The EFF also talks about race a lot. So those two parties gaining support, does that mean anything?
Well, it's interesting that they both gained in support for the same reasons, but on the flip side of the reasons. So the rhetoric of race, whiteness, land, is what drove many conservative whites to the lager of the Freedom Front Plus for hiding, because they felt that this is the party that they could trust. By the same token, the fearlessness of the EFF to speak race in a country that sometimes is tempted to pretend that racism is no longer an issue, to speak to that issue, to speak about whiteness in a manner that many people feel but are not permitted to voice. I think that's what also helped the EFF gain a lot of support. But both ends of the game do not have much scope for growth, in my view. So the EFF will have to diversify its issues if it really wants to grow. Similarly with the Freedom Front Plus, if it wants to grow beyond whiteness, as it were, it will have to diversify its issues.
Well, land was an EFF issue, and land was the issue that we all spoke about a few months ago. In the days leading up to the election, it seemed like land took a back seat. That surprised me. Do you agree?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. I saw it taking a backseat. I think it was a very deliberate move by the ANC to tone it down, especially after the parliamentary processes, and to step away from it, probably for economic markets reasons. One is not sure. So my sense is that this is going to become a thorny issue between a revitalized EFF in Parliament and an ANC that has not yet been defeated, as it were.
Yeah. The one winner we haven't spoken about is the IFP in KwaZulu-Natal, again the official opposition. How much of a victory is that?
I think it is a significant victory. We shouldn't take it away from them. There was a time when we thought the IFP will be blown away and become part of history in that province, especially with the emergence of Jacob Zuma, who comes from there, who garnered a lot of support from people there. And I think that they are benefiting from that, but they are also
some ANC voters punishing the ANC for ousting Jacob Zuma.
That is not impossible because Jacob Zuma himself has not always been kind to his party in some of the rhetoric that he has been giving there, even though, thankfully, he did campaign for the ANC. But the other reason is that the NFP is really done very poorly in that province. Part of it is lack of leadership. They didn't even have the time to flex their muscle during the local elections. So I think all that space is being taken by the IFP.
In finality, final question, looking at the big shift, maybe it is amongst those young voters who aren't registering, who aren't voting. What does that apathy mean for the big parties and the country going forward?
You know, every political party in South Africa should see the young people as the frontier to be reached. Because the only way you are going to shift things in terms of the big picture that you and I have been talking about right from the beginning is if you can tap on those people who have not been activated and have not been registering for voting. And once they are registered, they are not turning up for voting. They, for me, could be the game changers in terms of reducing, if you like, or increasing the ANC majority if the ANC is the one who goes first, gets them first. But if another
would it have to be a very different party?
Certainly, yes, certainly. But whoever will get to the young people first might be the one who will make it a 200. You know, at the moment, we haven't even reached a 200-seat split between the ANC and the other parties. For me, it is when you activate the young people that we might reach that split. In other words, where all the opposition parties together could garner 200 seats. We are not even yet there. And they could, if many of the young people who either have not registered to vote or have registered but not voted had been able to go and vote.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Tinyiko Maluleke, breaking down the results following elections 2019. We take a short break, we'll be back.